On the day we were to receive a major award for our business, my husband handed me a folded napkin. On it, he'd written, "This partnership is dissolved." In front of our entire staff, he declared, 30 years is long enough. I need a woman with fresh ideas, and you need to be out of the bakery by Monday. He'd forgotten that my father gave me the seed money to start that business. I walked to the podium, tapped the microphone, and shared a little secret that left him utterly ruined. That morning, Clara Peterson was awakened by a hushed conversation coming from the hall. It was her husband Richard on the phone with his mother again, speaking in that conspiratorial tone he'd adopted lately. Clara remained still, listening as bits of their talk drifted into the bedroom. "Everything has to be timed perfectly," Richard insisted. "She can't see it coming." "Of course, dear," his mother Margaret cooed on the other end. Clara's stomach clenched. What were they planning? Especially now, just before the Charleston Business Guild Awards. The floorboards groaned as Richard came back into the room. Clara squeezed her eyes shut, faking sleep. He got into bed, but she could feel the tension radiating from him. He was restless, like a coiled spring. The next morning, the air in their beautiful Charleston home was thick with unspoken things. Richard was almost comically attentive. "Clara, my darling," he said, kissing her forehead. He was wearing that expensive aftershave she'd bought him. "Let's make sure we have the best table for the awards ceremony tonight. I want it all to be perfect." Perfect. The word hung in the air. Clara arched an eyebrow. In 30 years of marriage, Richard had never cared about the details of their social events. She was the one who planned, organized, and executed everything while he usually just showed up to accept the praise. "All right," she said slowly, watching him as he grabbed his briefcase. His phone, left on the kitchen counter, buzzed with a message. Clara's curiosity got the better of her. It was a calendar alert. "Finalize with A at 10 a.m. Later that day, she asked him nonchalantly as she trimmed the roses in their garden, "Who's A in your calendar?" Richard froze for a split second. Clara saw the flicker of panic in his eyes before he composed himself. "Oh, that's Allison, a new supplier from Atlanta. Just going over some contracts for the flour." A lie. Clara knew her husband's tells. Whenever he lied, he had this little habit of rubbing his thumb against his forefinger, just like he was doing now. "I see," she said, offering a placid smile. But inside, her heart felt like a lead weight. After he left, Clara stared out at the sprawling oak trees in their yard, their branches draped in Spanish moss. 30 years. They'd met when she was a passionate pastry chef with a dream, and he was a business student with ambition. They poured everything into the Peterson Patisserie, building it from a small corner shop into a beloved Charleston institution. They'd wanted a family, but it never happened. The doctors never found a clear reason, but the void was always there. Richard had taken it poorly, especially when his mother, Margaret, would make cutting remarks about the lack of an heir to their dynasty. Over time, they'd found a rhythm, pouring their parental instincts into their business and their staff. But somewhere along the way, the warmth between them had cooled. A sharp rap on the front door pulled her from her memories. It was Margaret Peterson, her mother-in-law, wearing her signature condescending smile. "Clara, dear," she said, breezing past her into the foyer. "How are things? Getting ready for the big night?" Margaret's politeness was a weapon, sharp and cold. In 30 years, she had never once made Clara feel like a daughter. "Getting there," Clara replied, showing her into the living room. "Richard wants tonight to be a grand celebration." "As it should be," Margaret chirped. "A prestigious award like this needs the proper fanfare. Celebrating at the bakery would just seem so small." She scanned the room, her eyes lingering on the furniture. Clara knew that unspoken judgment. It was Margaret's way of reminding her that the Peterson family home, a grand house south of Broad Street, was far more impressive. "By the way, dear," Margaret said, perching on an antique armchair, "I've been thinking about the future. Richard isn't a young man anymore. He's 55, and with no children, don't you think it's time to get the business succession plan in order?" Clara felt a chill. "Succession plan? We've always said we'd sell it when we retire." "Oh, but think of my nephews," she said with a dismissive flick of her wrist. Two bright young men. They could take over. We wouldn't want the business to fall into the hands of strangers, would we? Clara took a slow sip of her sweet tea. And the original business charter? Margaret asked suddenly, her tone deceptively casual. Where do you keep it? I was just thinking about Richard's legacy. The nephews, you know. The next generation. That was it. The hidden agenda. It's in the safe deposit box, Clara replied, her voice flat. Why? Oh, no reason. Just good to know where important things are. One never knows. After Margaret left, Clara sat in the quiet house, the pieces clicking into place, the hushed phone calls, Richard's sudden meticulous planning, and now Margaret's questions about the business charter. The picture forming was ugly and clear. She went to Richard's home office and tried to log into his laptop. For years, the password had been their anniversary. It didn't work. Her heart began to pound. He'd never hidden things from her. Not like this. She tried his birthday. Nothing. His mother's birthday. Nothing. Then, on a whim, she tried the date they'd opened the bakery, but backward. It worked. His search history was a punch to the gut. Dividing a business in a divorce. Buyout clauses for business partners. How to remove a spouse from an LLC. He'd been researching this for weeks. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled through the links. Legal strategies for asset protection in a separation. Her phone buzzed. It was her old friend, Diane. Clara, you are not going to believe this. I just saw Richard at that fancy new jewelry store on King Street. He was with some young woman. What did she look like? Clara asked, her voice barely a whisper. Young, maybe late 20s, a redhead, very flashy, wearing a designer dress. They were looking at necklaces, and she was all over him. Are you okay, honey? Yes, Clara lied. I'm fine. But she was far from fine. That evening, Richard came home with a large bouquet of lilies and a box of expensive macarons from their rival bakery. For the woman who made it all possible, he said, kissing her cheek. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. She looked him square in the eye. Richard, we need to have a serious talk about our plans. He stiffened just for a moment. Talk about what? He asked, busying himself by straightening a picture on the wall. Everything is wonderful. The award ceremony is tonight. All our friends and colleagues will be there. Let's not ruin the celebration. We can talk after the party. After the party. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a deadline. He was planning to make his move tonight. Clara nodded, a cold resolve settling over her. She knew her husband. He was planning a meticulous, cold-hearted, corporate-style takeover of her life, with his mother as his co-conspirator. But Richard didn't know that Clara had a secret of her own, an ace she'd been holding for a very long time, and she wasn't about to show her hand just yet. The day of the awards ceremony arrived with a sense of impending doom. Richard was out the door before sunrise. Big meeting with investors, he'd said. Clara knew who his investor was. At 10 a.m., their landline rang. Richard had left his iPad on the charger, and the call synced to it, showing his mother's face on the screen. Clara didn't answer, but the voicemail message was clear. Richard, it's me. I spoke with Mr. Vance. It's all set. The main thing is she has no idea until you're on that stage. Call me back. Vance, the corporate lawyer, not the Atlanta supplier. It all connected. Clara felt the world tilt on its axis. 30 years of her life, her love, her work, being dismantled like a hostile takeover. She picked up Richard's iPad. It was locked with a new 6-digit passcode. She tried their anniversary. No luck. Margaret's birthday. Nothing. Then she thought of the redhead. Her gut told her to try Valentine's Day of this year. 214. It opened. The text told the whole story. Amber, my love, just be patient. After tonight's ceremony, it'll all be settled. The patisserie will be all mine. Richard, you promised we'd be traveling by summer. I'm sick of being your secret. My darling, the plan is in motion. Mother has it all worked out. Clara doesn't suspect a thing. Vance says if we handle the announcement right, she'll be too embarrassed to fight. I'll keep the business. Clara sank into a kitchen chair, her body trembling. They were liquidating her life as if she were a failed asset. Richard, his mother, the lawyer Vance, the mistress Amber, all of them in a conspiracy with her as the target. And the messages got worse. Richard to his mother. Mom, are you positive the business charter lists us as equal partners? Maybe I own the controlling share. Son, I looked at the copies when you incorporated. It's 50-50, but Vance says there are loopholes. The key is to get her to sign the dissolution agreement tonight. And if she refuses, after what we do to her in front of the whole Charleston business community, she'll have no choice. What were they going to do? Humiliate her publicly? Paint her as incompetent? Without another thought, she screenshotted the most damning messages and emailed them to herself, then cleared the evidence. She needed help. She called Mark Davies, a friend from college who was now one of the top litigators in the state. Clara, he said, his voice warm. It's been too long. What's up? Can you meet me? Today? Clara asked, her voice tight with unshed tears. I need a legal opinion. Of course. My office at 4 p.m. We'll sort it out. Mark's office was in a historic building overlooking the harbor. He greeted her with a warm hug but instantly saw the distress in her eyes. Sit down, Clara. Tell me what's going on. She took a shaky breath. Let's say I have a friend. Her husband is planning to leave her. He's hiding it, and I think he's planning to take their shared business. Mark looked at her, his expression kind but firm. Clara, is this friend you? She fell silent for a moment. Then the whole story came pouring out. The secret calls, the text messages, Amber, Margaret's scheming. Mark listened patiently, taking notes. I see, he said when she'd finished. This is bad, but it's not hopeless. The best thing you have on your side is time. Now tell me about the bakery. How did it start? We started it together in '95. We're equal partners on paper. Are you employed by the company? I'm the head pastry chef and manage the day-to-day operations. Richard handles the finances and marketing. I've been there every single day for 30 years. And the building? Mark asked. We own it. It's the company's biggest asset. Clara, they can't force you out if you stay strong, he said. In a divorce, assets are divided. But they're clearly planning a psychological attack. They want to corner you, humiliate you into signing away your rights. So what do I do? Document everything. You've already got the messages. That's great. Open a separate bank account in your name. And most importantly, play dumb. Don't let them know you're onto them. Clara nodded, feeling a flicker of hope for the first time in weeks. She had an ally. Thank you, Mark. What do I owe you? He smiled. Not a thing. We're friends. Just promise you'll keep me updated. And remember, you are not weak, and you are not alone. Clara went home with a renewed sense of purpose, but the welcome she received showed that the battle had already begun. Richard was standing in the living room, a frown on his face. You look tired, Clara, he said, not meeting her eye. Honestly, you've let yourself go. Turning 50 isn't an excuse to stop trying. You need to dress more professionally, maybe see a stylist. I saw Diane's daughter today. She's only 30, but she has such a polished, executive look. And you still look like a baker. He was building his case, laying the groundwork to paint her as someone who was holding the business back. I have a full-day strategy session tomorrow, he announced. It's a Saturday, but it's crucial. Another all-day date with Amber. That's fine, Clara said, her voice even. And on Sunday, I'm helping my mother with her estate planning. It's time we got all our family affairs in order. He was preparing his new family while dismantling his old one. That night, while Richard snored beside her, Clara logged into their joint business accounts. Over the past 2 months, nearly $50,000 had been moved in various payments. A down payment on a new condo, payments to a law firm, charges from high-end boutiques, all from their shared profits. Clara let out a shaky, silent laugh. He was financing her destruction with her own hard-earned money. But she had an ace in the hole, a secret nobody knew. A few weeks ago, a letter had arrived from a law firm in New York. Her grandfather, a man she barely remembered, had set up a trust fund for her when she was born. It was to mature and pay out on her 30th wedding anniversary, an event now just weeks away. The trust contained a portfolio of stocks now worth over $2 million. It also held the deed to a small commercial property in downtown Charleston, the very building that housed the Peterson Patisserie. Her parents hadn't just given her seed money, they'd bought the building and put it in the trust for her. Richard thought he was a 50% owner of the business, but he was actually a 100% tenant in her building. She hadn't said a word, planning to surprise him with the news as a celebratory gift. Now, that trust was her declaration of war. She opened her laptop and began making calls, transferring the funds, and preparing the legal documents that would protect her from the man who thought she was a fool. Richard thought he was holding a royal flush, but he didn't even know he was playing the wrong game. On Monday, Clara had a plan. Her first stop wasn't a lawyer, but her father's old friend, Mr. Abernathy, the real estate attorney who had handled her family's affairs for decades. Clara Peterson, what a lovely surprise. How's your father enjoying retirement in Florida? The old man said, his eyes twinkling. He's doing well, Mr. Abernathy. I need your help with something, she said as they sat in his dusty, book-lined office. And it needs to be completely confidential. The lawyer's smile faded. I'm all ears. Do you remember the property on Queen Street? The one where my bakery is? You handled the purchase for my parents back in '94? Of course. A wonderful location. A smart investment for them. Can you tell me how the deed was structured? I was so young I don't remember the details. Mr. Abernathy pulled a thick file from a cabinet. Ah, here we are. It was quite specific. Your parents bought the building outright and placed it into a trust for you. You were the sole beneficiary. The trust was structured so that ownership would transfer to you directly on your 30th anniversary. Richard's name isn't on it anywhere. A wave of relief washed over Clara. So legally it's a premarital asset? Legally it's not a marital asset at all. It's your inheritance. He has no claim to the property. He could only argue for a share if he could prove he personally funded major improvements to the building itself. Clara almost smiled. Richard had never spent a penny on the building. He always used the business account for repairs. Could you draw up a document confirming that for me? Certainly. I'll have it for you by tomorrow. Leaving his office, Clara felt a sense of power she hadn't felt in years. But her next discovery at home nearly took her breath away. A certified letter from the New York law firm had arrived. It contained the final documents for her grandfather's trust. A stock portfolio valued at $2.2 million and the deed to the Queen Street property, free and clear. She was a wealthy, independent woman, but Richard couldn't know. Not yet. Her phone rang. It was Richard, his voice dripping with false enthusiasm. Clara, darling, I was thinking, for the awards ceremony, we should invite everyone. All our employees, our biggest clients. Let's make it a huge night. Why the big production, Richard? It's a huge honor. I want everyone to see what a wonderful team we are. I've already booked a private banquet hall at the Mills House, reserved it for 150 people. 150 people to witness her public execution. Isn't that awfully expensive? Don't you worry about the money, he said dismissively. It's there. This is about our image. I want our colleagues, our competitors, everyone to see how successful we are. What a lie. Fine, Richard, Clara said calmly. Whatever you want. Perfect. I have another meeting with those suppliers. I'll see you tonight. Suppliers. She knew exactly what that meant. That afternoon, Margaret arrived carrying a gift bag. Clara, my dear, she said, her voice like honey. A little something for you. Inside was a brochure for a high-end spa and a gift certificate. I thought you could use a little sprucing up before the big night. You know, to look your best. The insult was clear. They were trying to fatten the calf before the slaughter. Thank you, Margaret, Clara said, her voice tight. How thoughtful. I just worry about you, dear, she said. Daughter. It was the first time in 30 years she'd used a term of endearment, right before she planned to destroy her. After Margaret left, Clara went through Richard's study. Tucked inside a book on corporate law, she found a business card. Vance & Associates, corporate litigation, partnership dissolution, the same lawyer, the same plan. Richard got home late, smelling of a perfume that wasn't hers. He gave her a hug. Everything is set. The menu, the guest list. It's going to be a night to remember. Clara looked at him, her eyes cold. He was right. It would be a night to remember. Just not for the reasons he thought. Richard, what perfume is that? It's new. He flinched. Oh, I was in a meeting with a new client. She wears very strong perfume. It must have rubbed off on my suit. Lie after lie. By the way, he said, looking out the window, at the ceremony tonight, I'm going to make a speech about the bakery, our partnership, and our future. What future? You'll see. It's a surprise. A surprise. A chill ran down her spine. She couldn't sleep that night. Around 3 a.m., she heard him whispering in the hallway. She crept to the door, pressing her ear against the cool wood. Mom, it's perfect. The venue is set. The whole business community will be there. After my speech, it will all be over. Are you sure she has no clue? How could she? She's too focused on her pastries. She trusts me completely. And if she puts up a fight about the agreement? She won't. After I explain how she's been holding the business back in front of everyone, she'll be too humiliated to do anything but sign. Everyone will see that she's the problem. Richard, isn't it better to do this privately? No, Mom. It has to be public. That way she can't cause a scene or argue. She'll just want to disappear. Vance will meet her at home afterward with the papers. It'll be quick and clean. And Amber knows? Of course. She's even coming tonight. I'm introducing her as our new marketing consultant. I want her to see the business she'll be helping me run. Cruel. It wasn't just a divorce. It was a character assassination. Clara slipped back into bed, her heart pounding. So, the mistress would be there to witness her downfall. That's what they thought. The next morning, Clara went to the bank. She opened a new personal account and initiated the transfer of the trust fund. If Richard was going to run the business into the ground, he'd do it with his own money, not hers. Then, she stopped by her lawyer's office to pick up the notarized letter confirming her sole ownership of the building. Her last stop was the bakery. Mr. Henderson, she said to her general manager, a man who had been with them for 20 years. Can I have a word? Of course, Clara. Is everything okay? For now. I just wanted to let you know that I might be going through some business restructuring soon. Restructuring? He asked, his brow furrowed. I thought you and Richard were on top of the world with this award. That's why I need to tell you. Whatever happens tonight, I want you and the staff to know that your jobs are safe with me. The bakery isn't going anywhere. Clara, you have my loyalty, always. We all know you're the heart of this place. That evening, as she got ready, Clara laid out her documents. She had a clear, solid plan. With the trust fund, she had more money than Richard could ever dream of. And most importantly, she had the deed to the building. He was about to get the shock of his life. Tonight was the awards ceremony. He thought he was delivering the final, crushing blow, but he was the one walking into the ambush. Clara put her papers in her clutch and smiled at her reflection. The ceremony at the Mills house was in full swing. The banquet hall was filled with the who's who of Charleston society. Clara smiled, accepted congratulations, and played the part of the proud co-owner, all while her stomach was in knots. The moment was coming. Clara, you look radiant, said a fellow business owner. 30 years. You and Richard are an inspiration. Yes, Clara replied, scanning the room. It's been an eventful 30 years. She spotted Amber across the room. Richard had introduced her as their new marketing consultant. She was young, beautiful, and wearing a dress that cost more than a month's rent. She was laughing with some of Richard's colleagues, looking completely at ease. Richard Peterson, congratulations, boomed a man from the Chamber of Commerce. It's not often we see a business with this much staying power. Thank you, sir, Richard replied, puffing out his chest. Tonight is a very special night. I even have a special speech prepared. A speech. Clara's mouth went dry. Margaret was gliding from table to table, soaking in the compliments about her brilliant son and his charming little bakery. Her eyes were shining with a smug triumph. She knew what was coming. At a table near the stage, a man in an expensive suit sat alone, looking stern. Clara didn't know him, but she recognized him from the law firm's website. Mr. Vance, the lawyer. He was here to witness the kill. "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC's voice echoed through the hall. "May I have your attention, please? The recipient of this year's Legacy Business Award, Mr. Richard Peterson, would like to say a few words." A hush fell over the crowd. Everyone turned to the stage. Richard stood up, adjusted his tie, and beamed at the audience. "Thank you all for being here," he began. 30 years is a long time. It's a lifetime, really, spent building a dream." The guests murmured their agreement, raising their glasses. "I've been doing a lot of reflection lately," Richard continued, his voice taking on a serious tone, "about what brought us here, what drove our success, and what has held us back." Clara braced herself. "Here it comes. And I've had an important realization. Businesses, like people, must evolve. What works in the beginning isn't always what's needed to get to the next level." The room grew quiet. People were exchanging puzzled looks. 30 years ago, I started this journey with a partner who shared my passion. But as we've grown, I've realized our visions have diverged. "Richard," Clara whispered from her seat, "what are you doing?" "Telling the truth, my dear. It's time we were all honest." He turned back to the audience, his voice becoming sharper. "My friends, I have to be honest with you and with myself. For 30 years, I have carried the financial and strategic burden of this business, while my partner remained stuck in the past, unwilling to innovate." Gasps rippled through the hall. "Richard, have you lost your mind?" someone shouted from the back. "On the contrary," he said smoothly, "I'm finally seeing with perfect clarity. Our bakery is no longer a partnership. I am taking sole ownership to lead it into the future." The room was in shock. Margaret, his mother, had a triumphant smile plastered on her face. "Furthermore," Richard continued, his voice booming with newfound confidence, "Clara must step aside. It's time for new blood, for a fresh perspective." He glanced meaningfully toward Amber, the redhead, who was trying to hide a victorious smile. "Is he serious?" a woman at the next table whispered. "In front of everyone?" "I have the right to protect my legacy," Richard declared. "Clara will be compensated fairly, and we will part ways amicably." "And that young woman is your fresh perspective?" one of Clara's oldest employees shouted, pointing at Amber. "Amber is a brilliant marketing mind who understands the modern landscape," Richard said without missing a beat. "Unlike others." That was it. Clara rose from her chair, her movement slow and deliberate, and walked calmly to the stage. She gently took the microphone from her husband's hand. "Thank you, Richard," she said, her voice quiet but carrying through the silent room. "That was quite a performance." Everyone stared, expecting her to break down in tears. "You know, my dear friends," Clara continued, her voice gaining strength, "Richard is right about one thing. It's time for honesty." Richard's smile faltered. This wasn't part of his plan. "The truth is, I've known about this hostile takeover for weeks. I've known about Amber. I've known about the lawyer, Mr. Vance, sitting right over there. And I've known about your plan to have me sign away my life's work tonight." Mr. Vance went white as a sheet and made a move to get up, but the glares from the surrounding tables kept him pinned to his seat. "Clara, what are you saying?" Richard stammered, trying to grab the microphone back. "I'm saying your plan has a rather significant flaw, darling." She reached into her clutch and pulled out a small folder. "You see, you made one little oversight. The Peterson Patisserie doesn't own this building. I do." She held up a document. "It was placed in a trust for me by my grandfather, a premarital asset in my name only. I have the deed right here." Richard stumbled back as if he'd been struck. "That's impossible." "And what's more," Clara went on, her voice ringing with clarity, "that same trust matured a few weeks ago, leaving me with a stock portfolio worth over $2 million. The silence in the room was absolute. "So, Richard, what business assets were you planning on dividing? You'll get half of our savings and half of your car. The business and the building it's in are mine." Amber, standing near the back, looked as if she'd seen a ghost. "And now for my favorite part," Clara said, a small, sharp smile on her face. Do you know how much this man spent on this little awards party to publicly fire his wife? Over $50,000 from our business account. A wave of angry murmurs swept through the guests. But I'm not a monster, Clara said. Richard, you're free. Take your brilliant marketing mind and build a new life, just not in my bakery, and not in my building. Wait, Richard whispered, his face ashen. We can talk about this. There's nothing left to talk about. I'll have my lawyer send you the divorce papers in the morning. Mr. Vance can go home. I won't be needing his services. She turned to the stunned guests. My friends, I am so sorry to have this drama interrupt your evening. But sometimes, you have to clean house. Thank you for coming. Now you know the full story. Clara placed the microphone firmly on the podium and walked off the stage. Behind her, the room erupted. Richard, you are a despicable coward, a woman yelled. How dare you do that to Clara? Amber tried to slip out, but she was surrounded by a group of furious women. And where do you think you're going, homewrecker? Did you think it would be that easy? Margaret was trying to do damage control, but no one was listening. Clara walked out of the hotel and into the cool Charleston night air. Freedom. She paused by the door, looking back at the chaos. Through the glass, she could see the empire Richard had tried to build on lies crumbling around him. He stood alone on the stage, pale and bewildered, like an actor who'd forgotten his lines in a play that had turned against him. Mr. Henderson, her manager, walked up to him. Richard, after this, I think it's best you don't come back to the bakery. None of the staff will work for you. But I'm the owner, Richard stammered. Not anymore, you're not, Mr. Henderson said, before walking away. In another corner, a new drama was unfolding. Amber, realizing her golden goose was cooked, stormed up to Richard. What is going on? She shrieked. You promised me a business. You promised me a new life. Quiet, Amber, Richard hissed, looking around nervously. Not now. Not now, she yelled, getting hysterical. I waited for months. You said you had it all handled, and now what? Guests were turning, their cell phones suddenly out and recording. Stop it, Richard pleaded. We'll figure it out. But Amber just laughed, a high, sharp sound. Figure what out? You have nothing. You lied to me. She turned to the remaining guests. You want to know the truth? This visionary has been funding our affair with company money for a year. He bought me a car with a business loan. The room fell silent again. Even Clara hadn't known that. Margaret, who had been trying to shrink into the wallpaper, rushed to her son. Richard, what is she talking about? What car? What loan? Mom, please, not now, he muttered. Not now? I co-signed that business expansion loan with you. I put my house up as collateral. What have you done? Another bomb. His own mother was financially entangled in his mess. Wait a minute, one of the guests said. So the three of you cooked this up to cheat Clara out of her own bakery? No, 3, Amber spat. 4, the lawyer Vance was in on it too. He drew up the papers to get her to sign everything away for pennies on the dollar. Everyone looked to the corner where Vance had been, but the chair was empty. He had fled. You witch! Margaret shrieked, turning on Amber. You did this. You poisoned my son's mind. Me? Amber shot back. Your son told me his wife was a simple-minded baker he could easily outsmart. A few men had to step between them to prevent a full-blown catfight. The CEO of the city's largest bank, a friend of Clara's father, stood up. Clara Peterson is one of the shrewdest businesswomen in this city. After this disgusting display, Richard, the only thing I'm going to do is call in that business loan, in full, tomorrow morning. Richard went from pale to ghostly white. He stumbled between his mother and his mistress, trying to salvage something, anything. People, please, he shouted. You don't understand. A man has a right to be happy. An elderly woman, Clara's aunt, stood up. And what about a woman's right to not be cheated and publicly humiliated by the man she spent 30 years building a life with? Good thing Clara's free of you now, her cousin added. You're a disgrace. Hey, let's get Monsieur Patisserie Trader trending, someone yelled, holding up their phone. No, please, Richard begged. This is a private matter. Private, Amber scoffed. You tried to ruin your wife in front of 150 people, and now you want privacy? Slowly, guest by guest, the room emptied out, each person shooting a look of contempt at Richard as they left. Soon it was just Richard, his mother, and Amber in the vast empty ballroom. So? Amber asked, smoothing her dress. What's the plan, genius? There is no plan, he whispered. I spent everything on this party, on you, on the lawyers. And the loans? Margaret asked, her voice hollow. Who's going to pay the loans? I don't know, he said. Maybe I'll sell the car. The car? Amber laughed bitterly. That won't even cover the interest. And what about me? I left my job for you. I don't know, Richard yelled. I don't know what to do. Margaret sat down heavily, burying her face in her hands. What am I going to tell the bank? I'm going to lose my house because of you. Amber stood up, adjusted her purse, and looked down at them. You know what? I'm out. The two of you deserve each other. Richard, lose my number. She paused at the door. Your wife is a class act. Too bad you were too stupid to see it. She walked out, her heels clicking an angry rhythm on the marble floor. Richard and his mother were alone. Richard, Margaret said softly, maybe it's not too late. Maybe you can go to Clara. Apologize. He shook his head. It's too late, Mom. You saw her face. She's done with us. Then what will we do? I don't know, he repeated, the words sounding empty in the silent hall. I honestly don't know. Meanwhile, Clara was in a cab, heading home. In her purse, she held the deed to her building and proof of a 7-figure bank account. The driver, an older man, caught her eye in the mirror. Quite a night, huh? Yes, Clara said with a small, genuine smile. You could say it was life-changing. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. Richard looked like a different man in the courtroom, grayer, thinner, wearing a suit that was too big for him. The judge was all business. The court finds that the commercial property on Queen Street is the sole and separate property of Mrs. Clara Peterson. It is not subject to division. Richard's public defender just shrugged. The business, the Peterson Patisserie, is also awarded solely to Mrs. Peterson, as it is inextricably tied to the property. The marital home will be sold and the proceeds divided. All business debts incurred by Mr. Peterson in the last year are his sole responsibility. Richard's face was a mask of despair. Outside the courthouse, he called out to her. Clara, wait. She turned. What is it, Richard? I'm sorry, he whispered. I was an arrogant fool. I destroyed everything. Clara looked at him, not with hatred, but with a kind of weary pity. I don't hate you, Richard. We just wanted different things. You wanted a shortcut to success. I was willing to do the work. Goodbye. She walked away without looking back. Life moved on. A year later, Richard lost his job. The video from the award ceremony had made him unemployable in Charleston's tight-knit business community. He ended up selling insurance, living in a small apartment his mother paid for after selling her house to cover the loans he'd taken out. Amber, ever the survivor, married a wealthy retiree and moved to Palm Beach. Her social media was filled with pictures of yachts and champagne. Clara, however, flourished. She rebranded the bakery to Clara's Kitchen, and it became more successful than ever. She used the money from her trust to open 2 more locations. She was a beloved figure in the city, known for her resilience and her incredible cakes. One evening, her friend Mark came to visit the flagship store. You seem happy, he said, looking around at the bustling cafe. Are you? You know, Clara said thoughtfully, I don't feel vengeful. I just feel right. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted what was mine. The truth has a way of coming out, doesn't it? They sat on the patio, watching the sunset paint the Charleston sky. Do you ever regret the 30 years? Mark asked. No, Clara said without hesitation. Those 30 years taught me how to bake, how to run a business, and how to stand up for myself. They weren't wasted. They were just the ingredients for the life I have now. A year later, she received a letter from Richard. He wrote that he finally understood what he had lost and that he hoped she was happy. She read it once and put it away. Her life was full. She had her business, her friends, and her freedom. She was the sole author of her own story now, and it was turning out to be a sweet one. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. It just goes to show you that sometimes the biggest betrayals can lead to the most beautiful new beginnings. I tell a new story here every single day, so if you don't want to miss tomorrow's, make sure you follow along and click that little bell so you get notified. I can't wait to see you back here for the next one.